Hello everybody, it's Amy here. I wanted to show you how I decorated an apron using stamps and dies from Eileen Hall's latest release. I had made an apron like this for Eileen to wear at Creativation this year, and it was a big hit. I thought you'd like to see how I made it. First, let me tell you about the apron itself. I bought this apron from Amazon. It's a pullover style with a crisscross back. I really love this style of apron because it's more like a dress than an apron. That said, this method can be used to adorn any piece of clothing, even one you already have. To make the color wheel patch, I first found 12 colors of fabric to use. Sometimes I didn't have exactly the right color, but somehow when you put them together it works. All of this fabric is from my stash, and some of it is vintage. Once I find my colors, I cut them down into a manageable size, something like a 4-inch square. I cut a slightly smaller square of interfacing. I used Heat and Bond Light because I had that on hand. I ironed the interfacing onto the 12 little patches of fabric. I also cut a piece of fabric to be used as the backing fabric. I then cut out 12 wedges of the color using the inner shape of this die. I just kept the backing paper on the fabric when I cut it using the precision chrome plate, and it cut beautifully. From the base fabric, prepare it also with interfacing and cut it out using the larger circle in the die. Next, I ironed each wedge into place onto the circle, first by peeling back the paper and then ironing it into place. I ironed it with a hot iron set to no steam. I kept the paper backing on the circle, and even though I tried to get this circle ironed on in the center, it's off center, as you can see, but I'm still going to go with it. Once the color wheel is complete with its colors, it's ready to apply to the apron. But first, let's make the other patches. I used the same fabric that I used for the backing of the color wheel, and I prepared it in the same way with the piece of interfacing on the back. Using fabric ink and Sizzix stencil and stamp tool, I stamped the images I wanted to use. I used the paintbrush and the swatch card, and I included the word Swatch Card. I also used the shape that looks a little like a viewfinder. I stamped the words Perfect Match inside of that. I had to repeat the stamping a few times because I'm stamping on fabric. That's why using the stencil and stamp tool is so handy. Just be careful not to smush the stamp too much, or your stamped edges will be blurry and thick. Next step, we'll embroider the details onto the fabric. If you're worried about gumming up your needle, you can stamp and embroider the fabric first and then apply the stabilizer. For the swatch card, I embroidered different stitches in each of the squares in different colors. For the paintbrush, I embroidered a little bit of paint on the end of the brush. For this wheel, I stitched little seed beads in place. Once these pieces are ready, I cut around them, leaving about a 1/4 inch margin. Here's how I made the name tag. The first thing I did was get a piece of fabric to be used as the backing, and this is about 8 inches by 8 inches. The next thing I did was prepare a piece of fabric to be used as the top part of the name tag. I just used a piece of red scrap, but I just made sure that the bottom edge of the fabric was fairly straight. And I prepared that with Heat and Bond Light and adhered it to that fabric with an iron. I designed a name tag on the computer, adding my name in cursive writing and the "Hello, my name is" in a sans serif font at the top. And then I printed it onto a product called Sulky Stick and Stitch. The stuff is amazing. After it prints, I peel the backing and then I just place it onto my fabric. When I place the design that's printed on the Sulky Stick and Stitch onto the fabric, I want to place it in a way that where the top part of the fabric that I place, that red fabric, will act as the top of the name tag. I want to make sure that's in the right place and that it's fairly straight. And then I use those lines, the printed lines, as a guide for my stitches. When I embroider this part, my signature or the name part, I just make small stitches across the letters. I did this because, as you can see with this font, there are thicker parts and thinner parts, and I just made small stitches. And the way I do it is sort of space the first few out and then come back and fill those in, and just sort of go stitch and then fill back in the best I can. And it's okay if it's not perfect. My style of embroidery is clunky and chunky and a little childlike and wild. But you know, this method will look beautiful if you have carefully stitched embroidery. Once I've completed the embroidery, I simply soak the piece in water for about 10 minutes or so, and gently rub the sulky stick and stitch with my fingers to remove. I find it easiest to do this under a running faucet. And when I'm done, I roll it up in a towel and leave this to dry overnight. Once that piece is dry, I can cut a piece of interfacing to fit it and iron that into place. And now we're ready to place our patches onto the apron. This is the fun part. Once I've decided on placement, I peel the paper back off and iron them into place. Next, I take it to my sewing machine and I sew all around each of these patches. I'm using a zigzag stitch. Let me see if I can try and explain how I stitch the color wheel. It doesn't show up really well in this angle, and I apologize for that. But what I do is I stitch the zigzag stitch straight across the wheel, bridging two of the wedges together, and I go through the center to also stitch the opposite wedges together. It's sort of like a line that goes straight through the center of the circle, on the edges of the wedges, the edges of the wedges. And then I don't stitch the round part of the wedge. Instead, I skip. I keep it in the sewing machine and just pull it over when the needle is up and the foot is up, and then stitch the next adjacent wedge group together all the way through the circle, and then sort of I guess I do it 6 times, making my way around the wheel. And then when that's done, I cut all of those threads, and then stitch around the circle. Now for this time I stitched the outer rim of the circle, and I realized that I hadn't stitched the inner part of those wedges. I hope that makes sense. So I just stitched again. So I did actually 2 outlines of this color wheel. I stitched around the colors part and then around the outside edge of the circle cut from the background, from the backing fabric. If you'd like, you can add buttons. That's what I did for Eileen's apron that she wore to Creativation. I just went into my stash and found buttons that seemed to match the rainbow colors that I was using. But I think it looks just fine without buttons as well. And that's it. What do you think? Are you going to make one too? If you do, please share it on Eileen's Facebook group, Eileen Hall Fan Club. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon with another fun project. Thanks again.